Today, we're going to be looking at a GeoGebra activity that will help us understand the relationship between radians and degrees, and it's a kind of an interesting activity. So please follow along. Very important that you follow step by step, and you can follow these as you have your GeoGebra, open it as we do these steps. The details are very important, so follow as closely as you can. We're going to begin in our D2L page, and from here, as you open this tab, you'll see a GeoGebra link. Click on it, and the GeoGebra page will appear. Um, you will see here your own name and if you or your identification. Most of you, I think all of you, have created an account, so that should be easily available to you. If not, it's nothing to worry about. You can create an account a bit later. What we're going to do today is explore one tool in GeoGebra that is very interesting. That is the geometry tool. We can access this tool at this space where you see geometry, or from this waffle where different tools from GeoGebra, and we're going to choose geometry. When we do that, we are going to have now this screen that shows us a blank space with some geometry tools here. We're going to be playing with circles, and we're going to get started and learn as we go along. So let's get started. So here, I'm going to start by creating a circle. I have several tools on GeoGebra that allow me to do different things, to move things, to make points, segments, lines, etc. One critical thing when we work in this environment is that you remember the last tool that you use. If I'm using the circle and I don't tell GeoGebra otherwise, it assumes that I want to keep making circles, which may not always be the case. So I'll be reminding you as we go along, and maybe I will make a mistake like I sometimes do. So here it is. Here we're going to do the circle, and every time I click on a tool, I get a message from GeoGebra that helps me to direct my actions. This tells me I can pick a point anywhere by clicking, and then as I move my mouse towards the outside and stop by clicking my left button again, I created a circle. So I created a circle with center A and point at the circumference B. That's pretty good. I'm going to come back here to the move tool, so I can no longer do circles. I can change the size of the circle by moving my point B. I can move point A as well. I can change their colors, etc. So pretty good. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a radius. So I'm going to create a segment from A to B, and I'm going to use the segment tool, and it tells me that I can select 2 points or positions. So I'm going to select point A and point B, and when I click, I have my segment. So now I go back to the arrow tool. I have a circle with radius AB. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this radius. And to do that, I'm going to need other tools. So I'm going to click more on tools here, and I will see a ton of other tools that are very interesting. We obviously are not going to get into all of them, but we're going to explore some of them. Well, guess what? We see here, measure distance or length. That's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to click on it and see my note here, select 2 points, a segment, a polygon, or a circle. So I'm going to select the segment, and I get a measurement. Uh, the units are not necessarily to scale, but I refer in relation to my drawing. So this measures 2.42 units. Very good. Now I'm going to show this as a radius. I'm not sure this explains what it is. So I'm going to left click on it, on the number, and click on this label. And it shows me, do you want a label? Yes, it says label F. I'm going to call this label R for radius, and ask me to show, I can show the label and the value. I want to see both. So I click on the label, and now I see that the radius is showing. I can grab it a bit by clicking on the move tool and move it. So the radius changes as I change the circle. This is pretty good. Now we are going to be working in radians. So before we do anything else, let's make sure that GeoGebra sets the angle measurements to radians. So we're going to come to the settings here, And then we are going to click on settings. There's a lot of things that GeoGebra does. We're just going to keep things to what we need today. I'm going to click on this icon, which is the algebra. And if you notice here, it says angle unit degree. I'm going to change these to radians. So now hopefully my angle measurements will be in radians, which is what I want. Good. Now I have then created a circle with a certain radius that varies as I move the point B. And this looks very good. So next thing I know is I'm going to create an angle of 1 radian, and I'm going to observe something interesting about it. So let's do that. So I'm going to move here, and if you notice here, I can measure an angle with a given size. This is what I want. So I'm going to click on this instruction and read what it says. Select leg point, vertex, and then enter the sides. So I want to make an angle that is centered at A. So I'm going to start with point B. The vertex will be A. And then I'm going to get a message telling me, okay, now what size do you want your angle to be? I will have to delete it and put 1. And I have to be careful because for some reason, GeoGebra really likes degrees, even though I already told him I'm not in degrees. So I have to delete this, make sure, this is important, that this doesn't have the angle measure here, the degree measure. And usually we measure our angles counterclockwise, excuse me, when they're positive. That's exactly what I want, an angle of size 1, and this is 1 radian counterclockwise. Notice that there's no symbol besides the radian. And I'm going to say, okay. And I see here that GeoGebra has created an angle. I'm going to go to the Move tool, and then I can move my things around. I can see this angle is a radian. I can see from B to A to B prime is a certain angle. And it is an angle of a radian. So now I'm going to create a sector so I can see this angle a little bit better. And this is how I'm going to do that. I'm going to move down, and I found here this circular sector, which is what I want. I'm going to build a circular sector on this circle. So when I click my direction, tell me select center point and then 2 points. Good. So this is the center of my sector. Point B is 1 and B prime is the other. And you can see how the sector was created and colored in blue. Very good. So now I have a sector that has an angle measurement of 1 radian. Now, the last thing I'm going to do to complete this exploration before we ask some questions is this. I am going to measure the distance on the circumference from point B to B prime on this arc, not straight line, but on the arc. So how do I do that? Well, I need to go to my measurement tools. So I'm going to come here and choose distance or length. And then remember, I can choose a segment. I'm going to move to click on my segment, which is the arc. And I should see arc length of D equals the measurement that I have. Make sure that I go back to my arrow tool, and you must see this arc length instruction key, because if you don't, that means you measure the straight line. So now we have created a circle. We have a measurement of 1 radian exactly because of how we build it. I want you to observe what happens, or what is the relationship between the arc length, this distance, B to B prime, and the radius. You can change the size of the radius and observe what happens to the arc length. Think about that, because we're going to have a couple of questions about it. I'm going to move this point A here. So let me backtrack for a moment. I created a circle, and within it, I have an angle that measures 1 radian. And I measure the distance along the circle that is produced by this angle, and I'm looking at this distance and the radius. Okay, very good. Now we're going to go to the next step, which is we're going to build an angle that is going to be bigger. We're going to build an angle that's going to measure pi radians. Let's do that. So we're going to go here again to an angle with a given size. And then now, same thing, I'm going to put my point, the vertex, and I'm going to get asked again by GeoGebra the measurement of my angle. I literally going to type the word pi as spelled in English, make sure that I don't have the degrees, measure it counterclockwise, say okay, and then I see that GeoGebra created. I'm going to go very quickly to my move tool to avoid mistakes, and then I will move this angle here so I can see it better. I have the point, the angle that goes from B all the way to B1 prime. To see it better, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a segment here from A to B1 so I can see my angle better. So I go to my segment tool and I build a segment from A to B1. And there it is. Very good. Now I'm going to do something else just for illustration purposes. I'm going to click on this beta angle. And I notice there's some tools here. I'm going to change the color of it so just I can see it better. I'm going to make it red. Now I can see this angle. And what I want you to think, now that you see this, how does this angle that is pi radians, we get the value here, beta is pi radians, meaning this red angle from this to here is equivalent to how many degrees? I guess you can see that. That's it. Then we are going to pause and you're going to answer a few questions. Okay, I forgot one last but very important thing. What do you do after? I want you to save your work. So you're going to come here, open this menu, and save. And these will send the file. You give it a title. Let's say Radiance Exploration 1, and save it, and you can have make it share or private or public. It doesn't really matter. But once you save it, it's going to be in your online file with GeoGebra. So that way you don't lose your work. So please do save it because otherwise you're going to lose it.